Okay, we're back with Football Club Talk here, joined by Jason Byrne of the Irish Sun. Jason, how are you doing?
Good, Shane. How are you?
Are you going to tell us about the rough week you've had?
I don't want to go into it too much, but I had a big head trouble that wasn't drink related for once, and a bad bout of vertigo. I don't know if anyone's ever had it, but not nice, not nice. I'm nearly back to 100% now, coming into the serious bit of stuff of championship, club championship. So I'm getting there, but it's no joke.
Yeah, you're a hardy buck, though. I'd say there's no keeping you down. Um, but you know
No,
what? Like, it's obviously been the big thing that's come out this week, and maybe some people are blue in the face talking about it at this stage. But games going behind closed doors, and even Tim Murphy was saying on OTBAM, like, when the decision is made, it's instantaneous. There's no lead in. The decision was made yesterday, which at that stage was Tuesday. If every county had a few days, for example, if the government had communicated with Croke Park in advance and there was a plan initiated around this, it would have made a huge difference. I do accept that it's an evolving situation and it's ever changing and the decisions are made on the hoof, so to speak. We get that, but I just think the GA have played a huge part in fighting this COVID-19 virus in every respect. All we're asking for is that we get that level of information, maybe in a more timely fashion, to allow us to deal with it then. It's an awful lot more palatable for an association to accept a decision if there's evidence provided. That's a reasoned decision. We don't have any supporting evidence at this point in time. I'm not saying it's not there. I just think the GA are well within their rights, obviously, to question NEFID. I think it's that the evidence is there. We should get sight of it. Now, first of all, do you think that the GA does deserve a little bit of prior notice ahead of the rest of the country? I wouldn't agree with that part, because I mean, as soon as the information is available and stuff is going to happen, everyone has to be told. But it is very, very difficult for clubs and county boards.
Yeah, like there's by no means should the GA take priority in terms of information. Like, we are in the middle of a global pandemic, and it's a very scary time for a lot of people. There's nearly 2,000 people dead here in the country, but we've seen the hope and the joy that the return of matches have brought for everyone too. So it's just like we weren't sure if Croke Park were going to react to this the other day at all. We weren't sure if the statement was coming, and sure enough, just after 9 o'clock, they went for the jugular and they stood their ground and they made their stance known, and they called out what they seen as a wrong move from the government. And I thought that statement from the GA was very admirable. A lot of people were in agreement with Croke Park and were kind of impressed by Croke Park's reaction. They're asking scientists to back up their thoughts with science. I thought it was a ludicrous decision that the government made to withdraw the crowds from sporting events. Definitely by no means should the GA take precedence over what's going on in the country, especially when it's such a very, very serious health issue. But, they've been so good through this whole pandemic. Like, when there was calls to open the pitches earlier, they stood their ground. They kept with caution, and looking back in hindsight now, that was definitely the right thing to do. Even though I probably didn't even agree with it myself at the time. Yeah. You've been to plenty of matches already, Shane, so have I. Everything's just been run so smoothly. The clubs have stood up to the mark so much. Like the volunteers across clubs all over the country, just getting everything in place, making sure everyone's safe, everyone's going in and out, the hand sanitizers, making sure people aren't using the dressing rooms, everything. Like the list endless now at this stage, but everybody knows the drill. There's been no disgraceful scenes of photos being put up on Twitter of people being hemmed into the middle of a stand or anything like that, because I think that's something that the GA were worried about, quietly on the side. There's been none of that, and anyone who's been in a match will tell you the same. So it's a very tough pill for them to swallow now, and it just throws everything up into doubt again. And it's going to be so tough for clubs with no gate receipts at all coming in now, compared to just making do with 200, which already included both panels and officials and all at the same time too. So I think it's just been a disastrous couple of days all around, and I can't see it being overturned in any capacity either, which is a great shame.
Do you know who I feel sorry for is the players that are now not even going to be allowed to tog out or show up in the ground with their team for a championship match. Like, you're going to find this weekend where a club might have a panel of 30 odd players and you need your backroom team and all this kind of stuff, and you might have players being told, sorry, you're part of our training panel, you're there all the time, but unfortunately you can't come along to this game. Isn't that a nuts situation?
Yeah, that's very, very unfair. And we even saw pre-COVID times. I think the 2-year anniversary of Limerick's All-Ireland win was yesterday. John Kelly, before that game, insisted that every single man who was training with that team got a jersey, no matter what the number was in the back, and that they all ran out onto the field before the game. They were on the change room before the game, and they all felt like part of the group because they were there all year, and he considered those bodies just as important as Nicky Quaid wearing number 1. So, for the likes of those players who were waiting on news and when they could come back and when they could train and when they could return safely, and to be shut out as well and maybe have to watch the game live on a Facebook stream or something, is going to be very, very disheartening for them, especially some of the stalwarts. There's so many of them at clubs up and down the country too. It's going to be very difficult for them because the GA has been such a massive release for people, especially in rural areas where things have been pretty grim for people in the last few months.
We're going to talk about a few club championships in football around the country. We're actually not going to talk about your own native one because I've done a separate podcast with Paddy McGill talking about the Donegal Championship, so check ourgame.ie and you'll find that. So obviously I've taken
able to speak too, no bother him.
He sure is. So I've taken your strongest hand from you here, but we'll start off talking about the Kerry Championship because it's always very interesting, and there was the club county club championship already, but there's a real cracker of a game to set us going here. Dr. Crokes against Austin Stacks. That's always going to whet the appetite.
Yeah, and there you go with your first big example of there could be 12,000 at that or whatever, especially if it was in a county final or something like that. Yeah, that'll be a cracker. Crokes and Austin Stacks, obviously be plenty of needle in that one too. They'll be looking to lay down a big marker against each other as well. It's again just prime example of a pity that's going to be played behind closed doors and people are going to have to watch it on stream or on TV or whatever, or whatever way they can get watching it. The cherry pickers will be flat out down in Kerry this weekend before that one too, I'm sure. That'll be a belter. So much top class talent on display, you've Kieran Donaghy, still modern, and a lot of the younger Kerry players will be looking to really put on an exhibition in that one too. So a lot of people will be, the standard in that game will be as good as any inter-county championship game we'll see later on in the year, hopefully.
And you talk about cherry pickers, of course. Back in 2014, as your Donegal team saw, there was people up in the trees looking in at Kerry training, so they might be using those trees to watch club championship this time. But of course you'd know nothing about that up in Donegal, would you?
No, I don't know what you're on about. No.
Plenty of other games on this weekend in Kerry. Kenmare Shamrocks against Shannon Rangers, Killarney Legion against Cairns O'Rahilly's, St. Kieran's against South Kerry, St. Brendan's against West Kerry. I think there'll be plenty of people looking to see after a few months off, obviously of championship action, that is, how David Clifford gets on. I mean, it's funny, just one man on his own, and I'd say it's a bit like Conor Callaghan in Dublin. Just by virtue of one man alone, the amount of eyeballs that want to see a game, it just changes massively because of David Clifford.
Yeah, the first memory I have of him, or the first wow factor memory I have of him, and when it really hit in how good he was in that 2017 minor All-Ireland final between Kerry and Derry when he got 4-4. I mean, usually on All-Ireland final days, shame for the minor game, you'd still have a lot of people maybe not out in their seat in the press box. People would be doing their research before the senior game, reading all the previews, getting all the last bit of homework done before the senior game throws in at 3:30. But in that game, everybody seemed to be out in their seat because, the stewards were coming in saying, just get out and watch this. Look what's going on out here. It was like looking at a game of FIFA, and someone had Lionel Messi with the controller. It was just obscene. And sure enough, the following year, when people wondered shouldn't he go into the senior setup, he delivered again, and he was Young Footballer of the Year. He's just an outrageous talent, and I can't wait to see even what the next 7 or 8 years brings if he stays injury free. I'm so excited to see what sort of David Clifford will be watching in 2025, for example, because he's just that good. I think we're really, really witnessing something special now, and I've never met him, but by all accounts he seems like a great guy, very well grounded, great with the young supporters around Kerry as well, and he's going to be such a role model and a leader, and of course he's captain for the county now as well, so I can't see that the weight of that having any bearing on his shoulders either. He's just top class. It's, you know, I can't wait to see him in action again.
Yeah, mid-carrier against Kilcommon, Dingle against Templenoe, and I'm interested to see how Templenoe get on this year after winning intermediate last year. Everyone expected them to cruise all the way to an All-Ireland, but Uach Gerard ended up winning the intermediate instead. So they're against Paul Ganey's Dingle. We've also got Field Rangers against East Kerry. Now the Mayo Championship, plenty of games going on here. I'll just run through them quickly and then we'll stop on Group 4, which is particularly interesting, actually, and a brief stop off in Group 3. But in Group 1, Ballagharine, so that's Andy Moran's side against the Nail. Gary Moore, they're out. Moy Davids are against Ahamore, Davids against Ballintubber. Ballina Stephenites against Knockmore in Group 3. Now both are already through, but the winner tops the groups, and they both kind of have ambitions to win the title, and when you're only 5 miles apart from each other, there's guaranteed to be plenty of hate. Kiltane against Clare Morris. Then Group 4, so this is the one where you have Brafey against Charlestown and Westport against Castlebar Mitchells. So this was the one that was the group of the death from a long way out. So Castlebar, like I think it's Westport, they topped the group on 3 points. Castlebar and Brafey both have 2, and Charlestown are on 1. So pretty much anyone can make it out of the group, which is kind of the way you want it. That's the dream scenario.
Yeah, that's, you know, all eyes are going to be in that group now this weekend, Shane. I think we spoke about it last week as well. Just it's been so topsy turvy, like, in a real group of death. It's been kind of fascinating to watch, like, and you've seen Brafey going into the Dragon's Den and beating Castlebar a couple of weeks ago, and you know there was a drawn game between Westport and Brafey as well, and just a lot of top class talent on display. You have Lee Keegan, the Durkins, the O'Shea's with Brafey. Robbie Henley's been showing a masterclass in goals from kickouts and frees as well. So again, another example of a game that it's such a shame it's going to be behind closed doors, because we know how Mayo people love their football. Imagine if that was on in McHale Park and Castlebar, like you'd be talking thousands upon thousands streaming in there, but instead they're going to have to do so on the laptop. So but yeah, and I'm really looking forward to watching that one, Shane. Like the way that group's been so far, anything could happen and anyone could go through from the 4 teams.
I'd say James Horan would be interested to see these now, because, you know, let's say at midfield you'll have the likes of Seamus O'Shea against Tom Parsons and Brafey against Charlestown, and then the battle of arguably the 2 best wing backs in the country with Lee Keegan of Westport and Paddy Durkin of Castlebar. Now some people will say Jack McCaffrey, but he's not on the inter-county stage anymore. There's obviously other contenders, but those 2 are at the elite level.
Yeah, it'll be top class. Like it'll be interesting to see how much those 2 lads actually clash. Like, or will they be on opposite sides of the field? But Durkin and Keegan will definitely be the engines for both teams and running the show. So, if both of them are on form, it's going to be very hard to pick a winner. But both of them, especially in a club championship game like that, they could easily kick 4 or 5 points from play and be in the end of a goal or 2 as well. So
moving on to the Longford Championship here. So, like, first of all, I'll look at one of the games, or no, actually instead let's just talk about the Killoe situation, because here you have a team that are supposed to play Mostram on Sunday in round 2, but as things stand, all their teams from under 16 level upwards, they've actually been banned from competition, and yet there is a mediation appeal on Friday night to see if they can play on Sunday. So they've been penciled in for Sunday, and yet they might be out of the championship, and the players are probably training away. It's a very strange situation, isn't it?
Yeah, we got wind of this story last week, Shane. Like, it had been bubbling under the surface in Longford. It stemmed from Killoe not fielding a team for an under 16A final back in January, and I think they were unhappy with something that happened with an opposition player in the lead up to that, getting off from getting a straight red, downgraded to 2 yellows, so he was qualified to play in that under 16 final. So I believe that's the crux of the situation. I'm sure a lot more of it will come out at that mediation meeting tomorrow night. But they got a €750 fine for not fielding in that under 16 game. Then they got X amount of time to pay the fine, refused to pay the fine, and having already played the first game of the Longford Football Championship as defending champions this year, they got hit with the 48-week ban, and they went to appeal it straight away. So a lot of controversy to get through there so far in Longford, but you know, it's a really, really drastic and draconian suspension. Maybe the Longford County Board are really trying to lay down the law here, but it's it's a difficult situation, and hopefully it gets resolved in the right way now, starting tomorrow night.
Yeah, and Killoe star man Mickey Quinn had a tweet up there a while ago showing that a glass house with tomatoes and such got destroyed there overnight, presumably by the storm now rather than anything else. But he's plenty of problems piling up this week. But interesting to see if they play on Sunday, and we'll keep an eye on that mediation meeting. But the other games going on.
Well, Shane, sorry, just to come across you there, it'll be interesting to see as well what happens if the suspensions are held, like for the likes of Mickey Quinn down the line playing for Longford, come the inter-county championship. What does that mean for them? Again, those questions I'm sure will be answered a bit more clearly tomorrow night, but that question's still there.
Yeah, plenty of other games going on there, just to mention one or two. Rathline against Colmkill, Carrick Edmond against Longford Slashers, and then a huge one is actually between Abilara and Dramard. So both were surprised by Granard, and with Abilara being beaten and Dramard drawing. So a draw will do Dramard here, who could shade this game, but like both have been kind of in the running for county titles for a few years. Francis McGee still playing well for Dramard, and Robbie Smith be the main man from Abilara. So that would actually be a very, very tasty game going into this weekend, if anyone can get to it, which of course they shouldn't. Right, moving on to the Wexford Championship, plenty of games there. Starlights against St Mogues of Feather, and a lot of these teams, they're only just finished the hurling in the last week or two, like Castletown Lean Mellows against Kilnairn, and then Sarsfields against Glyn Barntown. Now Lee Chin will be playing for Sarsfields there, having only a week and a half ago as we speak, but 2 weeks ago, having been knocked out with Fate Harriers in the quarter-final of the hurling, whereas Glyn Barntown, they were actually playing last weekend in the county semi-final. It's such a quick turnaround to go from one code to the next. Like if you got knocked out early from the hurling, or if you didn't have a hurling team in your football only, you've some advantage, don't you?
Yeah, you definitely do, Shane. But just the thing that struck me and a lot of people about the Wexford thing is how quickly it's all been crammed in. Like, obviously they're hurling county finals on this weekend, and kind of they're saying that it's not down to any of the inter-county managers, but they said it was down because they've so many dual players. But if you look across the likes of the Galway Championship, there's plenty of dual players in those championships as well. And Galway's just one example. You obviously have Clare, Limerick, Kerry. There's countless examples. So it just seems like it's very, very crammed in. And, the one time that the club players do get their chance to have a nice crack at it in the months bar the storm last night, but the weather's supposed to be good, that you see a championship like Wexford's hurling one being over by this weekend already. It just doesn't seem right.
No, it doesn't actually. Then in the Down Championship, Breeder against Rostrevor, who had a win last weekend, and I think that was Quailon Mooney's first game in 8 months, so we'll see how he gets on. Longstone against Ballyholland, Dara Cross against Loughlin Island. Big one then, Kilcoo against Warrenpoint. And I was just reading in the Irish News, Danny Hughes, former Down player, I think most people remember him from that run to the All-Ireland final in 2010. He was talking about Warrenpoint, and he says about 10 years ago, Warrenpoint put together, now there'd been an element of soccer, I think, in the area, they'd gone out of senior, but he goes, about 10 years ago, Warrenpoint put together a blueprint and devised a strategy to return to senior championship to the town within 8 years. The club has not wavered from the principles within that document, with a lack of commitment from players going unrewarded right from underage level up, no matter how talented they are. With a younger manager in Neil McAleenan, I see him as a future Down senior manager, by the way. Warrenpoint will not be far away in the next few seasons. It's great to see young managers like McAleenan getting jobs with such clubs. Really stands out to me there is the whole idea of attitude, that lack of commitment, not rewarded, and you're more or less going to be left out if you don't step up. And that, I think, especially in like clubs that are trying to make a breakthrough, that often you almost have to make concessions for that talented player, even if he's not at every training session or if his attitude is stink at times. I think that's a good thing, and that's the sort of thing that should be rewarded. I'm happy to see that.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, Shane. Like, and a lot of those words there as well kind of resonate with the Kilcoo story too. Like, and especially in terms of the change of attitude. Like, they were knocking on the door in Ulster for a long time after winning so many Down county titles, and then Mickey Moran proved to be the man to come out and shift that attitude and just get them over the line in the province and got them to an All-Ireland final and bringing Corofin in extra time, of course. So, a lot of those words resonate from what happened in Kilcoo last year too, which is interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. Cavan Championship this weekend, it's at round 4. Now Gowna are against Castlerahan. Gowna had a good win against Killygarry last week, 2-12 to 2-11, and got 1-2 in the dying minutes to turn that around. Rammer against Crossrolock. Rammer had a thumping win over Cavan Gaels last week, 13 to 10 points. Addo Cole and James Brady were very good in the full forward line. Killian Maguire, Simon Cadden and Garrett Mannion more that impressed. So it was actually like a really big scoring burst towards the end that won it for Rammer, 2-6 to 0-2 late on. Mullinahorner against Labby, Lacken against Kilgarry, Shercock against Kincourt Stars, Larry United against Cavan Gaels. So as I said, Cavan Gaels on the back of that heavy defeat, and like they'd been fancied to regain the title after last winning in 2017. They've got Martin Dunn, who everyone probably remembers briefly from the inter-county stage. Probably one of those guys that you thought he was going to take over from Shawnee Johnson and be a star man for years to come on the inter-county stage, but hasn't really kind of panned out that way. But like when you're still in the group stages, even if you lose some game and you lose it by 8 or 9 points, you're not necessarily ruled out of the running, are you?
No. It's like it's fine if you've just got up to a good start, especially the way the Cavan Championship's built as well. It's the same system in Donegal, the way they have it mapped out. It's very similar in a way, at least. So, a lot of those teams that have 2 wins under their belts already can definitely afford to rest up a wee bit this weekend. It's good to see the Cavan County Board have tidied up their fixtures a wee bit. I've been critical of them in the past as well. They were fixing some games there for Sunday nights at 7 o'clock. Just doesn't really seem fair on players. I see there's a lot of 4 o'clock throw-ins there, so a lot of the lads talking this weekend, Cavan might be a bit more happy with those times. Yeah,
especially when you're in a county where a lot of your players are commuting elsewhere, it's ridiculous. And I even see it in Tipperary. Now most lads, well, there's probably plenty of lads living in Tip, Limerick, elsewhere, but like 6 o'clock on a Sunday evening, you often see these throw-ins, and it's great for people who are showing up and going to matches, albeit that won't happen now. But for the players, it's a disaster. You get no weekend at all because you're actually just kind of trying to while away the weekend just to get to the match. You can't go boozing, you can't go hanging out, whatever it might be.
Yeah, exactly. And I've even seen Cavan do it before on a bank holiday weekend. Instead of just even going for their Sunday night at 7 o'clock, they would go for Monday night at 7 o'clock. It just must be head-wrecking for players. And imagine all the crying they have to listen to from partners, family members as well, if there's an occasion on. Like it's very, very tough.
What about the counties that are coming back out of the lockdown? So Laois, Offaly and Kildare. So Laois and Offaly have matches going on Monday and Tuesday night. Do you think that will bother players at all? I mean, how much training could they have done in that? They were allowed to train, but I suppose it wasn't quite the same level. Do you think it'll take a funk out of them at all, or it'll just be business as usual?
I'd say it'll be business as usual, Shane. Like, there'll be a bit of bite to the games now because they'll probably be chomping at the bit to get back out onto the field. I know a lot of GA people in Offaly and Laois in particular were very, very frustrated that their fixtures being put back. They were kind of maybe trying to point the finger at Kildare a wee bit, and the numbers did suggest that. But the noise coming out of Laois and Offaly in particular, there was a lot of anger out there from the GA community that their fixtures were hit and that the counties in general were put into local lockdown again. And cases seem to be sprouting up elsewhere as well. So I think it will be business as usual, to answer your question, with a bit of bite as well, because they'll really be chomping at the bit to get results on the board and move on with their championship after being told to stop for a couple of weeks.
Absolutely. So there's a full list of fixtures from the football championship on our game.ie. I won't read them all out because Jason, I don't think you'd be able for it at all. You'd be bored to tears by the end of it. So thanks very much for joining me for that, Jason. Really appreciate it.
Good man, Shane. Cheers.